Welcome to Buffalo Pregame, your source for live Buffalo football discussion, news, analysis, opinions, and more. Presented by ASM Publications and Bills Digest.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Buffalo Pregame. I'm your host, Alex Brasky, here for Bills Digest and ASM Publications. On tonight's show, we'll discuss the absolute shellacking that the Bears took to the Bills on Sunday night, 38-0, the worst preseason loss in Bills history, believed to be, and it was one of the worst performances you'll ever see on a professional football field. So not a lot of good to get to tonight, but then again, a lot to get to nonetheless. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll get to it in just a moment. But each week on Buffalo Pregame, I'll provide updates on the NFL, NHL, and more via daily articles, videos, podcasts, and more. Please subscribe to Buffalo Pregame with Alex Brasky on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, along with Buffalo Pregame with Alex Brasky on Substack, both of which are free of charge. All right, let's get into it. This was, like I said, just an absolute shellacking by the Bears, and the Bills just didn't come to play in any phase of the game, really. Maybe special teams, the one phase where they managed something, as Brad Robbins had himself another pretty decent game. But the Bills starters did not play in this game, although a few significant names did find their way onto the game field, including Joshua Palmer, who got the start in this one. But most of the top contributors for the Bills did not. And as Sean McDermott said in his post-game press conference, this was a chance for the Bills to evaluate some other players on their roster, and he was looking forward to some of these players stepping up, as I'm sure Bills Mafia was as well, but didn't quite get to see that as much as he would have liked in this one against the Bears. Before the game, one thing I was really looking forward to was the Bills pass rush, specifically the young pass rushers on part of the Bills against this Bears offensive line, who, although it was bolstered a bit this offseason, it allowed Caleb Williams to be sacked a league-high number of times last year, and Michael Hoyt had himself a nice preseason game in Game 1 against the New York Giants, and I thought there was something to build on from him and maybe a couple others, including rookies TJ Sanders and Deion Walker, but none of them really brought the heat in this game, as Hoyt ended the first half with a sack. So I guess that was a potential win, but if you look at the game in totality, just not enough there from the Bills pass rush, and it led to a mighty difficult night for the Bills secondary on the back end as well. But other than maybe little pieces here and there were really not a lot of positives to come away with in this one. Mike White got the start at quarterback and somewhat thrown to the wolves in this one, still amid that quarterback 2 battle with Mitch Trubisky. Didn't have really any first-teamers other than Joshua Palmer in that starting lineup. The offensive line was the second-team offensive line, and that allowed a bit of pressure. The running game couldn't get going once again with Ray Davis. So it does appear that the QB2 battle is pretty much over at this point, with Trubisky probably taking the win, just more so due to what White was unable to do tonight. Trubisky in his start last week managed to get some things going as the start progressed, but tonight White just was not able to do anything. Finished 4 of 11 for 54 yards in really what I think was his last stand in this quarterback 2 battle. And Trubisky started the second half, didn't really fare any better than Mike White, but like I said, it was really about what White didn't do in this game and what Trubisky did in his start a week ago. When you compare the two, it seems like Mitch Trubisky is going to hold on to the quarterback 2 battle at this point. But really the big news coming out of this one was Cole Bishop, the safety, the expected starting safety alongside Taylor Rapp this season. He's been out with a quad injury for quite some time. He draws the start in this one. Rapp did not start, but Bishop was one of the few expected starters that were in the lineup, as Sean McDermott has really been saying that Bishop needs those reps with the first team in order to round himself into form. And boy, it looks like he needs a lot more reps after the way he played tonight. Third play from scrimmage for the Bears. I thought that Bishop's play recognition and pursuit on the play looked strong and maybe a little over anxious, so he whiffed on the tackle. But as his performance went along, as brief as it may be, he really seemed to be just everything too much for him in this game. A little bit too early coming back from that quad injury, perhaps, as after that whiffed tackle on the Bears' third play from scrimmage, he makes a tackle in coverage, and then a couple plays later gets absolutely torched up the seam by Zacchaeus. I believe it's Olamide Zacchaeus for the Bears. Caleb Williams finds him for a 36-yard touchdown, and Zacchaeus was a player that really hurt the Bills, as you saw in that video posted by the Bears social media team, really hurt the Bills in that joint practice earlier this week, and comes back in this game with a 36-yard touchdown. Like I said, right up that right seam, just running right past Cole Bishop in coverage. It was like Cole Bishop never saw him coming, and a couple steps behind, and he lets Zacchaeus get behind everybody and run away for the touchdown. And the concern with Cole Bishop has been his coverage ability. It's not his physical ability or his ability to tackle, although he did fan on the tackle early in this game. It's the cerebral side of the game. Can he kind of come to terms with what's expected of him within this Bills defensive system and be able to apply it on game day or even on the practice field? And he's struggled in coverage, I think, dating back to his rookie season, and it hasn't gotten leaps and bounds better. And as you saw today, he's always going to be prone for that huge play, a receiver running right by him like we saw last year in that Texans-Bills game with Nico Collins. This Zacchaeus play was maybe not a carbon copy, but it was something similar to see Bishop running after the play and just getting absolutely toasted out there, as did Damar Hamlin at times as well. He was called for a defensive holding in this game. He got absolutely obliterated on a block near the goal line that opened the door for a 1-yard touchdown run. So safety is starting to become somewhat of a concern for the Bills, as it was to start out this preseason and really the offseason. I think some of those concerns went by the wayside as everyone kind of took it for granted that Cole Bishop was going to pick up the reins and figure out this safety position, but it just has not seemed to be the case with Cole Bishop, as once again struggling here tonight. Like I said, it was an abbreviated stint for Bishop against the Bears tonight, but one that he'll want to forget and want to move on from perhaps next week if he gets some more reps against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the Bills' final game of the preseason. But as Sean McDermott said after the game, they need to continue to find out what they have at this position and continue to get Cole Bishop, a young player in this system, continued and added reps. So I would expect to see him out there in the third preseason game, maybe the only Bills expected first teamer out there come in that third preseason game. But you look at this safety room in totality with Cole Bishop, with Damar Hamlin, and now Jordan Hancock, who had a pretty solid day, especially in run support, ends this game with a shoulder injury. So a promising young player seemingly trending up gets hurt at the end of this game. And then you have Cole Bishop and Damar Hamlin really struggling to gain their footing as the team's two first-team safeties at the start of this one against Chicago. So I'm not sure if it was the quad injury with Cole Bishop and he's just a little bit rusty and like I said, needs some more reps, or if it is those lingering concerns with his ability in coverage, his ability to really diagnose things on the back end and be that trustworthy stopper when it comes to big passes over the top, as we saw for years in this system with Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer doing a great job in that regard, not allowing anything over the top. And now Cole Bishop comes in here, and in his first 2 years, it seems like he's very prone to giving up those big plays down the seam or along the outside. So it's going to be something to watch here with this safety position. And all in all, I think starting to become somewhat of a concern here. Taylor Rapp, like I said, did not play in this one. he might turn out to be one of the most important players for the Bills defense this entire season, just based on what they have at the safety position. But as time goes on, Bishop needs to remain available, and he needs to start to really find his footing, as I said, in this Bills defense, because they desperately need it. They need him to take this starting role and run with it. If he's unable to, like Sean McDermott kind of alluded to in his post-game press conference, he said, we have to look at the film and see who we have, who can help us, what we may need, and things we can do better execution-wise. Maybe they're not done looking around at safety. Maybe come cut down day, a safety comes off another team's roster and they pounce at the opportunity to get somebody else in here to give a crack at it. Because right now, you don't like or you don't love what you've seen from these safeties to start this Bills training camp and preseason. It's really been not even a mixed bag. It's really just been a difficult stretch for this group throughout the preseason. Trying to make my screen smaller here on the computer so I can see two screens at once. Struggling to do so, but seem to have figured it out. Bills couldn't figure anything out tonight. I mean, you look at this game from pillar to post, the Bears ran it, threw it, and down the Bills' throat and just stopped anything Buffalo tried to do offensively. It was really one of the most, you don't want to call a preseason game embarrassing, because at the end of the day, as Sean McDermott said after the first preseason game, these games aren't really game planned for, so it's tough to give a true evaluation in that sense. But at the same time, it just seemed like the effort wasn't there, and just everything the Bills tried to do, the Bears did that much better. So it's going to be interesting to see at that safety position if things are settled and they're just going to move forward with Cole Bishop and roll the dice with him come regular season, or if they're not done looking around, poking around come cut down day, if a free agent comes free and they're able to find somebody to help them at the safety position. But let's break it down from this perspective. The Bills starters on offense against the Bears: Mike White, Ray Davis, Joshua Palmer, Elijah Moore, Tyrell Shavers, Jackson Hawes, Ryan Vandemark, Chase Lunt, Kendrick Green, Dan Feeney, and Richard Garage. That's their starters on offense. Ryan Vandemark had back-to-back false start penalties. He's supposed to be battling for the swing tackle role with Tylen Grable, who remains in concussion protocol, but Vandemark didn't necessarily help his case tonight with those two penalties, especially being somewhat of a veteran player, a little bit more expected in that situation. But I'll have to rewatch and see. Officials aren't always perfect in these scenarios. And Chase Lunt, I thought, also a tough game tonight. A rookie, so some growing pains for him expected. He had a nice game one against the New York Giants playing guard and tackle. We'll have to see how he was used tonight in the rewatch, but I thought there were a few plays he was beat off the line of scrimmage. So some things to work on for Chase Lunt, and really the offense second group up front overall as a whole didn't do a great job protecting Mike White, left him running around. I believe he was sacked twice for about a loss of 17 combined between the two. So not a great day for the Bills offensive line. The Bills starters on defense: Landon Jackson, Deion Walker, TJ Sanders, AJ Epinesa. And the interesting thing there is Landon Jackson getting the first crack at reps over the second-year player Javon Solomon. So I'm not sure if that's just how the rotation worked out, or if that was something that was planned to be that way. But it did appear Landon Jackson a little bit ahead of Javon Solomon in the pecking order in terms of snaps at the edge rusher position. Elsewhere on defense, you had Joe Andreessen, Dorian Williams, Dorian Strong, Dane Jackson, Brandon Codrington, Cole Bishop, and Damar Hamlin. One thing is for certain: Brandon Codrington is not an NFL cornerback. I think he continues to kind of struggle to hold up his end whenever he's put out there on defense. He's just a kickoff, kick return specialist. That is what he is, and I think you got to stop trying to fit a square peg into a round hole and just kind of you've given him the chance at this time, and he's kind of proven to you what he is. I know they're a little banged up at that position with Max Hairston, but giving him the start in this game, a little interesting. Although maybe he had nickel cornerback. I'll have to go back and see, because listed with Strong, Jackson, and Codrington. I'll have to go back and see which one of those three were the nickel cornerback. That's an interesting note that I didn't consider, that I'm thinking of on the fly. But this was a tough night for Joe Andreessen. He was featured on Hard Knocks, the second episode. Traveled around with him a little bit in his hometown, a good look at the hometown kid. And he had a good week 1 against the New York Giants, but struggled week 2 against the Chicago Bears. Liability and pass coverage at times, and even in run support, really chasing the play, I thought, all night long instead of really meeting it at the point of attack. So tough night for Joe Andreessen. Not one of his shining moments, as Buffalo Joe will have to find his way back to the forefront perhaps in week 3 of the preseason. So you didn't see Josh Allen, no James Cook, no Keon Coleman, no starting offensive line, no Joey Bosa, no Greg Rousseau, no Matt Milano, no Terrell Bernard, no Tre'Davious White, no Christian Benford, and as I said before, no Taylor Rapp. So you have to take this game somewhat with a grain of salt. You can't totally run away with yourself and say, oh, maybe this team isn't as good as we thought, and it may not be as deep as we thought. That's one thing that may have been proven tonight against the Chicago Bears. But at the same time, look at all those first teamers that didn't play. So you have to take the overall performance and the score on the board with a grain of salt. But when you look at some individual efforts or lack thereof, there is some room to be concerned. And when you look at the depth of this team, it really starts with that rookie class along that defensive line. And I thought this was a concerning game for that group. Landon Jackson, another nothing game for him, didn't find his way onto the stat sheet, looked slow coming off the edge, looked slow to diagnose, looked slow to really his get off. It looked like you could really time it with a sundial at times, him getting off the ball at the left edge. It was at the forefront of your screen, so it was really easy to pick up on. And there was a few times where he was the last one on the line coming off the ball. And I think that, combined with just kind of running around at times, seemingly aimlessly, I think there's a long way to go for Landon Jackson before he's ready to truly contribute at the NFL level. Beyond that, Deion Walker and TJ Sanders both equally had their struggles, I think. You had Deion Walker getting that pass batted down at the line of scrimmage for the second straight week, but he and TJ Sanders got big boyed a couple of times, and that's a lot to say for the big man, Deion Walker. But particularly TJ Sanders, I thought at the point of attack against the run, maybe double teamed a couple times. I'll have to watch it again, but seemed to not be able to handle those very well, or at least his assignment, and seemed to get swallowed up within kind of the surge there up front. And I just thought those three as a whole, that rookie group, didn't stand out as much as Deion Walker and TJ Sanders did week 1. And like I said, with other rookies, it's an up and down process. This progression is not linear, and it is the preseason after all. So like I said, you take these games and performances for what they're worth, and you kind of move on and see what it is for them. I'm gonna get off my lawn comments on YouTube. The sky is falling. No, it is not falling. It's the preseason after all. And like I said, you just gotta kind of keep things in perspective this time of year. And I thought it was disappointing, those three, the three rookies. I mentioned Solomon playing a little bit behind Jackson, perhaps. Solomon did find his way onto the stat sheet this week. Michael Hoyt had that end-of-half sack, but the depth of the pass rush struggled in this one, and just a disappointing night overall for that group. I think it's really top-heavy with Greg Rousseau, Bosa, Epineza, even Hoyt may be mixed in, but we're going to have to see where things go off the edge from that point. Dwayne Carter made a standout play in this one, chasing down a screen pass, which was really somewhat of a revelation for the Bills. They haven't been able to defend the screen pass at all in recent years, but Dwayne Carter making his presence felt there. So that was an impressive play. And I think that really just about does it. A few more things here. I mentioned Brandon Codrington at the kick return position. Elsewhere at kick returner, Laviska Shenault and Frank Gore Jr. got the first crack at kick returns. This could be an ongoing competition until the end of the preseason. Got Codrington coming back from last year. I think the thing that the Bills are looking for is Shenault capable of playing wide receiver if they need him to in a crunch, and maybe able to do a little bit more than Codrington would be able to in a specialist role. But like I said, this could be an ongoing competition to the end of the preseason. And another somewhat positional competition is the depth tight end role, the tight end 3 role. And Kaleki Latu joined Zach Davidson and Jackson Hawes in dropping a pass this week. You had both Davidson and Hawes dropping passes last week. And this week it was Latu getting in on the action with a drop. So no one really taking hold in that race for the tight end 3 role on the Bills roster. And then finally at wide receiver, Tyrell Shavers continues to show he's an NFL caliber receiver. He's a tough matchup along the outside, showed great footwork and burst today off the line, beating his man one-on-one, able to get that back shoulder catch. I think he finished with a couple of catches for maybe 20, 30 yards. He's just able to make those contested catches at times and win those one-on-one matchups on the outside. And his size combined with his speed, his strength, and now what's turning into some flat-out ability at the wide receiver position, he's once again going to make it tough to keep him off this roster. And Sean McDermott has pointed to his need to increase his special teams ability. But boy, oh boy, with the wide receiver position kind of fleeting the way it is, there's only 3 stone cold locks at the wide receiver position. You have Khalil Shakir, you have Keon Coleman, you have Joshua Palmer, but then Elijah Moore has done nothing to assert himself in that room. Curtis Samuel didn't play again tonight. Shavers has done more than both of those guys. I understand there's differing skill sets and you'd like to diversify that room, but at some point you just got to keep the best 5 guys, and Shavers, without a doubt, has been one of the best 5 guys throughout training camp and the preseason. Elijah Moore dropping 2 passes tonight. I mean, come on. At some point, you have to keep Shavers on this roster. Heck, at this point, Shenault and Christian Wilkerson might have done more, no pun intended, and Curtis Samuel for that matter. Shavers, 2 catches, 29 yards. Wilkerson, 1 catch, 25 yards, which at the time I think doubled the amount of yardage that the Bills had late in the first half. They had like 24 yards. That catch went for 25. They were being outgained 340 to 20-something at one point. It was an absolute ass kicking, a waste of all of our time tonight. Maybe the Bills should game plan for these games. I tweeted that out during the game. I mean, what good did you take from that game if you're the Bills? All you can take are negatives. Except maybe Shavers. Maybe a couple other things I mentioned. But my, oh my, this was just a flat-out destruction. Then again, we move along. Down to Tampa Bay. So, either way, it is what it is. You can find more on my Substack account, Buffalo Pregame with Alex Brasky. It's going to be a short episode tonight. I'm going to figure out who started at nickel cornerback. I think the way I wrote this, it was strong. I'll figure that out. But thank you for joining us. I failed to say this earlier in the episode. Please like, share, and subscribe. Like this post on YouTube. Go to the YouTube app, Buffalo Pregame with Alex Brasky. Please like this. Feel free to leave your comment after the fact. It would do us a big, big help. Subscribe on all your audio platforms and on Substack. But thank you for joining us, and I'll see you next time.